This is just sort of a. I don't even like to use the word intelligence update because just because I experience what I experience where I'm at doesn't mean that somebody else is going to experience what I do where I'm at. Like somebody above the floor above me, and I know that anyway. But for what it's worth, because you experience the changes that are taking place over time space vectors, right? And so one of the ways in which I can tell what's happening with the cosmos is communicating with my antenna, right? Is a couple things that I experienced to know that. One is what we call traffic, because I'm in an echo chamber, an echo world, an echo God world chamber, where I'm hearing the changes in the PSI, the pressure changes that are taking place. Like right now, I'm hearing like a leaky air hose. Most people have been around an air compressor, right? And they can hear the air, leaking wherever it's not doesn't have a vacuum, or it can't get out. The big cylinder in which that air is held, right? And so when you need to keep the lines flush, you know what a line that's flush, right? And now you get into pressure and density, right? How much pressure can that line hold before it breaks, pops, bust a hose, right? Well, I'll just give you an example. The fire hose that I used when we were chasing the Spirit of Fire, we normally use 100-foot lengths. The numbers are really fascinating in how this all works with fire letters and burn patterns with sound and light. But the lengths of hose that we were using was called cotton jacket, cotton. You know why cotton, right? Cotton breeze, that were rubber lined, which is insulated, right? Not all hose is insulated. Like a lot of the cheap hose they would use in cheap hotels, you could see it leaking out the sides, right? Water's leaking out. So you realize in that case, it's losing pressure, right? But you can get more volume. Sort of the way that the hose work, particularly when you understand how a Venturi system works, where you're getting more than you're putting in. And that's called ejecting, ejectors. If you know what an injector is. Right? We used to use ejectors when we we're running low on water, for example, out in areas, in rural areas, chasing the Spirit of Fire through wildland, wooded areas, right? And you realize, hey, there's not a hydrant for 40 miles. So the only source of water you got is whatever's out there, right? A spring, a small pond, right? A lake. And so you throw the hose in there and you start out with smaller hose and then the larger hose. And so you're putting less in, but getting more back. So more is less. That's right. That's why I was giving everything away when I was a little kid. I don't want more. I'm in the business of giving electrons away, which is a measurement of the density that that you operate in, which is no density, which is no electrical resistance to what? Accelerate electrons from the primal sound and light field. Those are your burn patterns. That means you acknowledge what it is that you are as a little kid, right? A hub server, a hub wheel, a galactic and universal hub wheel. And so the fire hose was one, if you will, number one, because it logs in memory. These are 100-foot sections. Now we're into sections, right? Parsecs, measurements, star measurements. So these are 100-foot lengths of hose, right? And as I remember it, if I programmed all this information, I should be able to total recall it 9 gallons. 9 gallons. Oh, the number 9. 9 gallons of water per 100-foot section of hose. So our engines were carrying, you could modify this and put some of the ones that I was on, because I worked for some folks that really love to chase the spirit of fire with water. I'm one of them, okay? Where people are fighting over being the nozzle man. I want to be the nozzle man. I want to be up front because they love to chase the spirit of fire. So this is where you get into fear and honor and respect. So you honor the spirit of fire because of how powerful the magic is with the spirit of fire, right? But we certainly do not fear being around major burns. You know, being around places where, if you've ever heard of area ignition, imagine that you're sitting in the middle of a source somewhere and you have a fire that's, say, burning around you, and the next thing you know, you become the center point of what's called a flash, which is no different than the flash inside of a girl's womb, right? That's how I came in, right? Come through the flash of light, and then you have an ignition point. And there is a separation in time, nano level stuff, between a flash point and the actual ignition point of a gas, right? Hydrogen. Expansion of that gas, right? And it's like a living star, right? Coming through the star. I'm coming through this Stargate, right? Coming through the gate system, right? Coming down into the lower gate systems, right? And lower creation gate systems, and the level of precision is like zero errors, because the math is so precise. God does not make an error, and where it wants to be at the precise moment, which is the opening and closing of a magnet that is happening so fast, because that hologram is running at a what? Slower rate of speed. Right? So you can actually tie this into what's known as friction loss in hose. And why there's less loss of energy, the larger the hose. Firefighters know that. Particularly structural firefighters know that. You know, using big 4.5-inch hose, big mains. Look at some of the big hydrants that you have in the larger cities. Right? Like the city of Los Angeles. The city of Los Angeles, I actually took their exam one time to go to work for the City of Los Angeles Fire Department because they had what's called a Class 1 rating. And how does a Class 1 come about? Performance. Now we're back to performance of software, operating systems, operating a fire department. And the way that sort of works is, now we're back to the underwriter, the underworld, the underwriter laboratories. And if you've ever peruse through the NFPA, which is the National Fire Protection Association, that's called their manual of codes, because it's all coded with numbers in sections of what are known as rules, based on what? How fire burns. And what our responsibility is to do what? Maintain the peace in the water worlds, so there's no turbulence. So that's why all these engines have water, carry water, and other extinguishing agents besides water, right? Folks that work in computer rooms have halon systems, right? And why it's necessary to leave that room when that detector has gone off and a halon's going to go off, you better be out of that room, right? And so the reason that it was a Class 1 department is because the underwriter laboratory gave them the highest rating. And why do you think it was given the highest rating? Insurance. Now we're back to Social Security insurance. They want to protect their investment because everything that represents a battery, right, it has value to them because that's their source of electrons, right, that they use to do what? Run machines, right? So all the machinery, like the song with the group called Rush, you know, subdivisions, mass assembly lines, right? Now we're back into assembly lines of seed, assembly lines of software, assembly lines of seeded races, and what DNA is as an assembly. Now we're back to the original architect. Now we're back to the point of origin, the first universal and galactic template, which you can measure and experience as burn patterns, patterns of behavior. You know, ignite the tetrahedron, right? 3 points on a triangle, right? And then you got a 4-square tetrahedron. 4-square crystal cathedral of Sophia, right? The mother God, right? Being one with all creation, right? An eternal son, God's seed, right? Atoms that cycle. A is one, right? Tom's like a tom-tom. Tom, calm, being calm. Slow the motor down. Slow the motor down. That's why I love listening to theta waves. Sometimes at night I'll listen to theta waves. Although sometimes when I think about past and future, when I experience the theta waves, it's like takes me back in time of when I had experiences that were very special. You know, unlike so many other folks, and I've sort of covered this before in the past. When you think of moments, a felt moment, what your soul feels at the completion of a magnetic circuit, what you feel, what we experience. I had a blast here. And I know that's counterintuitive to a lot of folks. You jumped into a black hole where you're constantly under attack. You should have been dead more times than you can count, and you still had fun doing this. Yes, I did. And the reason for that is actually quite simple, and the sun recognized that I'm talking and saying this because the sun lit up. See? I love you too. When I think of those, what I call cherished memories, like Cherry Point, you know, cherished memories, what I call precious memories. They are so precious because you realize that you're moving through the cosmos at such a high rate of speed between one moment and the next. It's like you want to hold that moment in time, phase lock it, if you will, to experience it because it was so beautiful to experience, because you know that you're going to have another moment after that, on a multi-density and a multi-dimensional level, which means you're going from one to the next and the next, and they're happening so fast simultaneously, it's ridiculous. So you honor the experience at the moment that we experience it and want to capture it in time with a camera eye, right? When you're inside time, right? Because then when you're out of phase, when you're in pre-matter phase, it's gone, right? Now you're moving on to the next one. Now you're experiencing the next felt moment of that closing, opening and closing of magnetic circuit, you know, just like a pickup on a guitar, electric guitar, right? Experiencing the notes of the music, notebooks, right? The book that we're writing, right? The life book that we're writing, the record that we're writing, the record that we're experiencing. So that's an experiential record, which is an experiential recording, which is an experience of burn patterns, sound and light burn patterns, right? That's hot light. It's like the moon. When we were little kids, we used to go out with a magnifying glass when the moon was out, man. I go, hey, light a fire with that moon. All you need is a magnifying glass. Right? So you realize, hey, I'll put a magnifying glass in my backpack when I go out to survival, right? All I need is a mirror. And remember when the moon is out, I can light a fire, right? Light my fire. Remember, what's his name? Morrison? Crystal Ship. Come on, baby, light my fire. And who those folks were all associated with, you know, just like, what's his name? The guy is a drummer for, and I love this group, Police, you know, because the lyrics spell it out, you know, Spirit of the Radio, right? The group Police, and what's his name? Stuart Copeland, because of all the different sounds that he can produce, right? I love his drum setup. He's got a lot of coconuts. Remember as kids when we used to be in elementary school playing music? And we used to, and back then we actually were using musical instruments that came more from nature than some sort of polymers, you know, fake stuff, synthetic stuff. Now you're in synthetic biology stuff, right? Polymers, why they, you know, they leave the oil in the ground, please, burning up the consciousness of the planet in order to make synthetic materials, you know, like Dacron, rayon, all that stuff. right? That's why the other day I was looking for one of the first Hawaiian shirts that I grabbed when I went back to the island of Kauai, even though it was the first time that I can remember that I was there. In 1972 and 73, I had the blessing to be able to experience a Hawaiian shirt, which was what we call a traditional one. If you want to get into heirloom, an original Hawaiian or Lemurian shirt, which they're like these, see? Flowers and leaves that represent nature, right? A girl's flower shop, a girl's garden, right? The Edens, Edens. And it had a burgundy background or a magenta background with the green leaves and white in there and flowers, bamboo, stuff like that. But it was made out of silk, and the buttons were coconut. Okay, so that means trinary stuff, right? So wearing trinary stuff instead of binary stuff, right? Deadlight magnet stuff, fakes, copycats. In other words, they take something that's used as another function and then use its function, what its function is, as oil in the ground in the planet, right? And then extract it, spending a gazillions amounts of energetic dollars, right? Battery power, to produce it and then refine it and then use it as a fuel to burn it, right? Hydrocarbons. And so all the products that came out of that, because I know that my uncle, which was Wallace B. Carruthers, worked for the pot that helped develop a lot of that stuff, like nylon stockings, right? And the effect that nylon stockings have on women's biology. Actually, everything that we put on us, because we're antennas. So we're picking up the frequencies from these clothes, right? That's why, for me, I normally prefer, in the environment that I operate in, to just have a pair of trunks, even though I went through an experience. I think I may have shared this one time before about when I was living in the treehouse, which was known as Taylor Camp, which was a piece of land that was on the North Shore of Kauai, at what I call the end of the road, which is Hyanna Point, before you can hike down to where the cliffs are, the Poly Cliffs, and take you up into Mount Waiale. Ethers are powerful there. And so Howard Taylor, which was the brother of Elizabeth Taylor, the actress, was offered the land to surfers that were surfing there to live there. And so out of that came a treehouse community. So when I got there in 1972 and 73, I had a friend of mine that was a surfer from Newport Beach, California, that used to surf Hanalei Bay with Jerry Lopez all the time, because this was a popular place, because that particular island, with the Polynesian island chains, the archipelago, with the Aleutian Islands, with the storms that come out of the Bering Sea, push, right? Enormous amount of energy that's going southbound. And so the first little tit in the ocean that it's going to hit is Kauai. So I've seen it out on the North Shore. It was over 100 foot easy. So that's some very big, powerful, energetic waves there that you can ride and just be in awe of that much energy doing that with salt water, right? And why, when I was there, the energy was just paradise, pure paradise. But I also opened up a major, what I call a pipeline, when all of a sudden one day my heart expanded, like expanding the universe. Whoa. And so Kauai is a very, 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 very special rock for me, my heart and soul, to be with her there. And if you want to do some history, you can go take a look at what's known as the Pacific Test Range, the Pacific Missile Range, PMR. Out at the end of the road there, when you're on the west side of the island, when you come out of Keikaha Beach, you go down to Barking Sands, you got PEMR, and then you got Polaholi. And you might be able to tie that directly into, if you remember a few years back, when all of a sudden the phones lit up on the Big Island here, people were getting a message that we got an inbound missile, supposedly launched from China. It was supposed to hit the Big Island, right? And then I saw a picture, a photo, a little bit later on where it was hit. And apparently it was hit and knocked out by the PEMR, the Pacific Missile Test Range, Pacific Missile Range. Okay, so these are just holographic inserts, okay, of what we experience, right? Because I don't normally experience stuff like that. And I realized that when I was a child of what I'm supposed to experience, what I'm not supposed to experience, and knowing the difference between what I'm supposed to experience, what I'm not supposed to experience, by knowing what we are in energy and the connection that we have to others that are, which is what love is. It goes on forever, gifting electrons, right? So that everybody's got plenty of voltage. So they're not experiencing anything less than the eternal Son of God, which is the original, right? The true origin of all creation. It began with the first engine. So the first engine is on fire. That's the most powerful spirit there is. It's a powerful spirit of fire. But obviously you need some cooling, right? So when you get into friction loss, which is loss of energy, that's called resistance. So the resistance was in the hose, right? So you either increase the volume and increase the pressure. If you're wanting to get water up above, up a hill, now you're into altitude density, right? Pressure, thermal gradients. So if you're sitting down there at sea level and you want to push water using a pump to get it up to 3,000 feet, and you want 50 pounds at the end of the nozzle to put 50 pounds pressure, so now you can run a fog pattern, what should be the setting of the pump at sea level? You can run that, right? We were supposed to be able to run that. We were supposed to be able to run all of our volume and pressure requirements inside of a planetary consciousness terrain in order to be able to do what? Cool the burn patterns, right? Back to the point of origin, right? So that the fire goes out, right? Now we're back experiencing a state of peace. So there isn't any turbulent in the water worlds, right? So a balance between the spirits, right? Spirit in the wind, spirit in the fire, spirit in the water, spirit in all the molecules, all the elements, right? The frequencies. So the radio star network is in a state of balance. No math errors. The precision of that geometry, right? And so those become the patterns that you can map, just like you see out there. And where is it? At Rock in the UK, those are burn patterns. When they put those logos there, those are burn patterns, right? The engine that's on fire, heat, right? Leaving an image. Put the photo in place. Photoresist. You know what photoresist is? Photoresistance. The resistance in the photo. The resistance in the photographic, holographic imagery, moving pictures, right? How fast are those frames? You know, windows, the eyeballs, the holographic eyeballs, the windows to the soul. Experience the essence of the spirit. The essence of the spirit. The nature of the flow. Now we're into flow rates, right? Flow rates. Rate of climb. Oh, rate of climb. Yeah. Now we're back to atmospherics. Now we're back to atmospheric consciousness. Atmospheric density, right? Density altitude. We're climbing along the plane, horizontally, through vectors, vertically, right? Hey, we just leveled off, baby. Now we're cruising. Now we're cruising through space with a Merkaba vehicle, right? A light spirit body vehicle. Translocate. Faster than the speed of sound. I know. This is what's happened just over the last. If you wanted to look at the changes that have taken place between yesterday and this morning, I monitor it by reflecting on what I experience. Any changes taking place from day to day. But when I wake up in the morning, normally, pretty much the same time when the sun comes up. You know, the circadian rhythm, how that works. Hey. and between, day and night, up and down, right? East and west, north and south, the exact point of origin at the center point of a cross, right? So all the sections, inside the ball, outside the ball, inside the ball, being the ball, right? Being the ball, being the sphere, being in the sphere of light. The consciousness ball that's running around. I know. I'm just very happy for everybody that's here on the earth plane, as we say, because when I woke up this morning, I normally do not go back to sleep, particularly when the sun's out. And then I found myself getting up and then going back to sleep again, and went back to sleep for about 3 hours and had some dreams. As a matter of fact, some dreams that I have, I don't want to leave. In other words, all of a sudden I'll wake up just for a very brief moment and go, no, I want to go back to that. Right? Ever done that? Ever experienced that? Where you were having a blast being inside that dream because of the folks that you were with? Dream walkers, walking dreams. I know. And so I realized, whoa, I slept longer. That's the longest I've gone back to sleep. Usually if I go back to sleep, I don't go back to sleep for that long because I looked at what time it was, saying, how long was I actually asleep for? Wow. I went back to sleep for 4.5 more hours? Hey, I went to bed last night. At what time was it? Probably somewhere around 10 o'clock, maybe. So I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and I need more sleep? No, I don't need more sleep. Right? Being awake, always awake. The spirit is always awake. The body processing the energies, right? The frequencies. So it needs some rest. The body's doing its thing. The physical body, the intelligence of the body, all the units of energy that are conscious and aware of themselves are processing this on my behalf. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So my body, which is a highly intelligent organism, which is a living organism, because they all work together in unison, right? In unison. They're all working together in unity because they know who I am, which is what love is. It goes on forever, the eternal spirit of fire. So they operate on behalf of what I am, that's running the equipment. So they take care of me, right? And do what's necessary. So in other words, there is a higher intelligence at work here that knows what it's doing, and that's called implicit trust. The implicit trust on your journey, the journey that we're having, which is a learning journey, right? Because you realize you're being loved, right? The first son loves you, so I'm experiencing being loved by the first original son, right? So that's an eternal love vibration. So that's what I experience in me. So I implicitly trust the God I'm always with, which is in my heart and soul. What love is, it goes on forever. So anyway, this is a very beautiful day to experience these kind of things, and this is one of the reasons why I share this, so that others that experience what I'm experiencing by virtue of communicating it to others on this video get an idea that, hey, there's some guy over there on the Big Island that sharing with us what he's experiencing. So that means that at least he's in Hawaii and he's experiencing being in a state of love and joy. So that's a good sign. That's called a signet, which is signals intelligence. So I'm sending the signal. I'm giving that message out on the phone. Right? And that is particularly true when you realize this is the Big Island I'm experiencing this on. Right? As opposed to a different island or a different rock out in space. Right? And the difference between why land operates the way that it does and the reason why an ocean operates the way that it does, and why that's important for those that are chasing the spirit of fire, right? Thermal gradients, right? The ocean, right? How long it takes to warm up, how long it takes for land to warm up, and then you get to experience the torque speed differential between the two, between sun up and sun down. Right? Heat rises, right? and density, how the density works between water and land. Water worlds, cellular water worlds. Aloha. Moa.